Welcome everyone. Welcome to day 2 of the Organic Seed Growers Conference and our second keynote. We're so honored to have you all here. It's been, I hope, a wonderful conference for everyone else. It certainly has been for me. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Jared Zystro. I am the Research and Education Director at Organic Seed Alliance. And before we begin our keynote presentation, I have an important and special announcement. We have an award, the first time we have ever had this award, and it is for an important and special member of our seed community. So, I remember back in 2008, I was a young seed worker, and I had come to the 2008 Organic Seed Growers Conference just full of questions about seed growing and farming and community life, and that was the first time I had had a chance to meet Ira Wallace. And what I realized right away was that Ira was incredibly generous. She was incredibly generous in terms of sharing her deep knowledge and her encouragement in this work. And over the course of the years, since that first meeting, and as I've gotten the chance to interact with everyone here in various ways in this seed community, what I've realized is that Ira really embodies the very best of the seed community, really lifting each other up and ensuring that knowledge and seeds continue to grow. For decades, Ira has been a visionary leader through her work at Southern Exposure Seed Exchange, as an author, an educator, an advocate, and in her steadfast commitment to uplifting seed growers, new farmers, and marginalized communities. I have seen her time and time again speak up, show up, and work tirelessly for seed, for people, and for community. And so today, it is my great honor to present the Outstanding Organic Seed Ally Award to Ira Wallace. Mama Ira, Mama Ira, we recognize you. We recognize you. Thank you so much.
Sing 1, 2.
Thank you, and thanks for bringing the award to me, because it would have been a slow track down there. I am so happy to see so many other people that I've worked with over the years here, and to be honored by those people who matter, whose opinions matter to me. And I'm seeing you uplift each other, and that makes my heart higher, go pitter-patter. Thank you.
Very good.
Okay, welcome everyone. This is the second keynote. We're doing something a little bit different, and I hope you're going to enjoy it. My name is Chris Smith. I'm just going to introduce it and then introduce speakers as we go through this PechaKucha Seedy talk. Just to give you a little framing to what to expect. About a year ago, I was approached by an organization in Asheville to give a PechaKucha talk. And I had absolutely no idea what that is, and I assume there's people in the room that also have no idea what that is. So basically, a PechaKucha talk is a presentation format that came out of Japan about 20 years ago, where you are forced to have only 20 slides, and each of them play for a fixed 20 seconds, so they auto-advance after 20 seconds. And through the experience of doing this myself and thinking about this, I kind of actually love it, and I'm terrified about it as a presentation style, right? It gives you, or forces you into this concise storytelling narrative. It's a 400-second story, which is beautiful to be forced to be, efficient with your words, but at the same time, a lot of us who present enjoy the freedom of just rambling on as we play our slides in the background. So it was this balance for me, but I really enjoyed the process and love it as a storytelling medium. So I was grateful when OSA kind of accepted the pitch that we could test out a Seedy PechaKucha at OSA. I've kind of been thinking about this idea for quite some time, or the last year since I gave mine, that it would be really fun to do like a hyper-topic focused PechaKucha. So when we decided to do this, we reached out to speakers and invited them to be a part of this. All our speakers are from the East Coast, apart from Holly, who's like so far east she had to fly across the Atlantic. So everyone's on that side of the world. And beyond that, we didn't give them any parameters. So it's a very free presentation style. We gently reminded that it was a seed conference and that probably focusing on seeds would be good. But outside of that, they could talk about whatever they want. And so what I'm hoping you're going to experience over the next hour and 15 minutes is kind of like a beautiful journey to lots of different places. I'm hoping you'll feel lots of different emotions, and this concise storytelling format is just going to allow you to like dip into lots of different beautiful worlds that the presenters are going to share with you today. A couple of I don't really like rules, but gentle reminders to folks that one, it is a challenging presentation style, so I invite you to give grace and understanding as we do this kind of inaugural PechaKucha address, both technological and for the presenters. It's new for a lot of us. And also, we're not going to be having questions, so the presenters are going to come up, they're going to share their story, and they're going to be invited to go back to their seat and enjoy the other presenters. So no questions in this keynote. So, without further ado, I'm going to bring up our first presenter, Holly Silvester. Quick introduction. Holly is currently living in Scotland, where she works with the Gaia Foundation Seed Sovereignty Program and is a farmer at East Nook Market Garden. I've enjoyed following Holly's journey, mainly through Instagram and some newsletters from afar. I grew up in England, and many people kind of assume that I know all about the British seed stuff, but my personal seed journey coincides with my American seed journey, so I really don't know what's going on in England. So it's a little bit of an insight following Holly's like really awesome work at home. And I think one thing that we do in America, and probably vice versa in the UK, is kind of like assume that what is happening in the seed world here is true of what's happening in the seed world in the UK. And one thing I'm excited to share with you through Holly's presentation is that that's not always true, and there's some differences and some challenges that we're going to learn about. My one other like super selfish reason for inviting Holly to this presentation space is that one day I may choose to move back to England, and I'm kind of secretly hoping she might give me a job. Okay, Holly.
Okay, are you there?
a lot of you all out there. We're gonna
So good.
go. Okay, so we have many barriers to seed sovereignty in the UK, and some of those might resonate with you all here today. There's the industrialisation and globalisation of agriculture, the consolidation of seed companies to those global chemical giants, our increasing climate chaos and unpredictable weather patterns. And we also have the additional challenge of being a fairly small island. It's estimated that up to 80% of organic seed is currently imported into the UK. And for those of you that have heard of that thing called Brexit, that whole process of importation has become a lot harder since then. Now, on top of all this, we also have some spectacularly restrictive plant variety legislation. We have something called the DUS test, which stands for distinct, uniform and stable. It pretty much is what it says on the tin. Crops must go through quite rigorous testing by government bodies to be proven to be genetically uniform before they can be legally marketed and sold at scale in the UK. There's absolutely no space for diversity in this system. And I really wanted to emphasise the impact of this legislation because much of what you do here simply wouldn't be legal back home. We certainly can't sell heterogeneous material or plant breeding lines. And one of the impacts of this is that farmer-led seed stewardship and plant breeding has become somewhat of a lost art. But at the Seed Sovereignty Programme, we're working really hard to change that. And I've been seeking ways to creatively engage farmers with plant breeding again. As a farmer myself, I've been dabbling with growing diverse gene pools for quite a few years now, and I've become excited by their potential. As I mentioned, growing heterogeneous material currently falls outside of the legal framework in the UK. So growing crops this way basically means being a bit radical and breaking some rules. And I don't know if it was this rule breaking that excited me, but mostly I think it's been the joy that comes from growing crops this way. Because there is something fundamentally joyous about working with all this diversity. It's creative and it brings a smile to your face, and it encourages us to enter into relationship with plants again. So I was beginning to sense that there was some kind of power in growing these diverse gene pools, a hook that I might catch some curious farmers on and really engage them in this whole plant breeding process and seed stewardship again. So, inspired by many projects here in the US and some in Canada, in December 2023, I advertised for participants for a crowd breeding project, a participatory plant breeding project very much led by farmers and for farmers. Now, 18 farmers from across the UK and Ireland were selected from all those who applied, and the group together decided on what crops they wanted to focus on. The focus of the project was to collectively curate diverse populations of crops. And last year, they selected broad beans, summer squash, and kale. And together, they decided which varieties to pool into these practices to create that initial ultra-cross and kickstart the breeding process. Now, this wasn't complete anarchy because all of the participants are very experienced farmers, and they worked together to choose varieties that had the characteristics that they wanted to create these new diverse gene pools. I then sourced all the seed, mixed it up, and sent it out to participants. Now, geographically, we're everywhere. We've got farmers located up in Scotland, all the way down to the southwest tip of England in Cornwall, and across over in Ireland. But luckily, we're not separated technologically, and we've been meeting monthly online on Zoom to share all aspects of the project. Now, I can tell you that facilitating 18 very excitable and opinionated farmers via Zoom has definitely been an adventure, but they've generally all been wonderful, and I've organised lots of guest speakers to keep people engaged along the way. And I think it's that community that has most definitely been the biggest outcome of this project so far. I admit my intention behind working collaboratively was mostly practical, because doing this as a crowd would speed up the breeding process, but also share some of those risks, because a crop loss from one farmer wouldn't be a complete disaster, because there's 17 other farmers growing that same seed. But more than those practicalities, what has emerged is the power of the crowd. Growing these crops together has provided solidarity and support for a group of farmers that are spread across the British Isles. To know that there's not just one, but 17 others growing the same seed as you has proved invaluable. Now, we've had a few hairy moments, don't get me wrong, and the group have begun to refer to these as I'm sorry, my dog ate my homework incident, but this is where that risk sharing that I mentioned earlier really comes into its own. Because even when a whole crop of your broad beans are eaten by hungry badgers, or mice get into the seed store and decimate your summer squash seed, there were plenty of other people in the group that still had seed, and that's where the power of this project seems to lie. It's not about the individual, it's about the we. Who are we and what are our common goals? What are we working towards together? And from that emerges a sense of community and collective hope. And there is hope. Kilos of seed were returned to me at the end of last season, and that has now been mixed up and redistributed to start all over again this year. And word has been getting out there. The movement is definitely building. More people applied and joined the project this January, and my intentions of keeping that Zoom crowd to a manageable size completely out the window. And as well as new people, we've got new crops, and things will hopefully get really exciting this season. Now, all of this is still to the backdrop of that restrictive legislation that I mentioned at the start. Nothing has really yet changed. But despite that, what's been really inspiring is to see members of this project getting out there and sharing this work with their communities and beyond. Speaking up at events and gatherings about the importance of diversity, about the joy of working together, and that perhaps we all need to shift our perspective a little. Because we can all grow our own liberty. And just imagine what could be possible if we, as farmers, really embrace the radical possibilities of seed. Thank you.
Okay. Next up, we have Chris Keeve. Chris is currently living in Durham, North Carolina. I think they keep moving. Okay. Chris is affiliated with Ujamaa, Utopian Seed Project, Limeberry Project, Hudson Valley Seed Hub, and I think everybody else. I've really had the honor of working with Chris a little more deeply over the last year on a project we're calling the Collard Atlas Project. And since Chris and I are both called Chris, then there's been a lot of crisscrossing, and we kind of struggle to differentiate ourselves. My farm manager, Lisa, who I love dearly, suggested that we could be called Handsome Chris and the other Chris, which I'm still not totally into. So what we settled on is Chris Senior and Chris Junior, which really does bring me to an important point. I feel like if you're not surrounding yourself with younger folks and brilliant minds and the next generation of people that are really holding the space, then you're doing something seriously wrong, and you should question your own organization and your own practices. And Chris is brilliant and creative and honest, and I truly think we should all surround ourselves with more people like Chris. So,
I'm Chris Jr., and I am not that young. This is Palimpsest. It's about art and friendship and the things we leave behind from the lives we used to live. I used to live in Lexington, Kentucky. I no longer do, and a few years ago, a friend of mine, Lindsay Funky, who also no longer lives there, invited me to make some cyanotypes by the river, using plant parts that we gathered around on the shore. The idea is that sunlight hits chemical treated paper, so everything that covers the surface blocks the sun. And if you leave it there for long enough, it produces a negative. It's a study of shadows, of things left behind. So we used the seeds and chaff left over from the previous season and arranged the discarded materials to see what they would produce. But also, we were interested in the living ones. we were interested in the living ones. So for example, we would take little paper clips and attach it to a piece of paper. This is a collard seedling in what was once my backyard. We wanted to see if we could do some kind of shadow work, quote unquote, without harming living things. So my garden in Lexington became the space of a different kind of creativity in which these different stages of plant life could leave behind their markings and messages. And by the way, these did not work. The reactants were no longer all that potent, and at one point we tried a sort of like natural dye type strategy, which also did not work all that well. It also failed, and that's fine. But it was an interesting study of shadows in the garden, and it was an interesting study of the ways in which light will play over the curves of both living things as well as the materials that we depend on. So then we tried jelly prints. We would cover a gel block with ink, which then becomes a quote-unquote blank canvas. In this case, it's very rich purple, these waves of ink covering this gel block. And we would arrange these layers of plant materials. In this case, some amaranth seed heads, seeds, leaves, and roll over top of it a blank sheet of cardstock, press it down, leave it there for a few seconds, and pull it off to reveal a negative. So this sorghum seed head becomes a galaxy, and the seeds become stars. It leaves behind these impressions of texture and little minute movements. Another example of these corn tassels and tulsi stems get to live again and tell a different story, preserved together as a record of plants cultivated, food grown, and seeds produced. And also, by the way, those are actual corn tassels that got stuck in the ink. That just adds to texture. And also seeds scattered. So chaff produces these scratchy records in ink, a lasting reminder of materials that would otherwise be discarded, but they get to live much more active, more chaotic, more artistic sorts of lives. These mustard leaves were my favorite, and they were layered over multiple attempts, so you get kind of a photographic after-image effect, a palimpsest, if you will, a writing and rewriting over it again onto the canvas, all these sort of like blobs of like photographic mistakes. Okra pods are a little trickier, so to press down once they've been split open, they kind of resist the process, which I appreciate. And you end up with these ghostly visions over what looks like degraded film. So we were experimenting here with more of a pressed pattern in the background that the okra pods kind of rest on top of. So they're reminiscent of angel wings or lungs breathing in. They invite the eye to dance and to play for a bit. On the flip side, this corn cob and leaves is a little more chaotic, just like the garden itself. Just like oftentimes our relations with each other and with land. It's this multi-directional cacophony of different ways of moving and growing and being together. These are all experiments with different sorts of record keeping. A meditation on how we leave traces of ourselves and the people that we care about, but also in the landscapes that we call home, and how they leave traces in us. As Octavia Butler once wrote, "Everything you change changes you." We are irrevocably altered, season by season, as we write our stories and seeds into the landscape, and they also change us in ways that we can't predict or can't control. But in the end, you still have chaff. You'll always have chaff, however transformed or altered, just like you'll always have seeds and dust and detritus from before that you don't know what to do with, like these forest seeds, which you loved last year, that I collect every year, and try to find some creative or alternative use for what it's worth. Just like, hopefully, you'll always have friends to help you along the way and hang out in your backyard in the middle of the city and process seeds and sometimes make art with all your chaff and dust and detritus, leaving traces of this place you once called home. Thank you.
Okay, tall Chris and short Chris. Okay, next up we have Kay Greene. Kay is affiliated with Hudson Valley Seed and Hudson Valley Farm Hub. I've been to quite a few of Kay's presentations, and I feel like I've never been in a space with Kay where I've not been like deeply moved by them. They've challenged me to think about language and thought in deep and impactful ways, and I truly believe that if we all stepped up and embraced just a fraction of Kay's integrity and intentionality and compassion around plants and seeds and being present in the world, then we'd really live in a better place. So welcome Kay to the stage.
Hi. I love pansies. I want to read you a letter that we received at the seed company, but I'm getting old, so I'm just going to put on my weekend glasses. To Hudson Valley Seed Company, I am returning this cover to you. I wish to know, why is there a political statement on the inside of the seed package? I was very dismayed and disappointed. I ordered seeds from you for the first time, but now it will be the last time. I don't need a lecture on the LGBTQIA agenda. I'm not homophobic. Furthermore, I don't see an S in these letters, so where's the equality for all? This made me feel seen. And there's a backstory to how this pansy pack even happened. It's a little political. It's a topic that may be sensitive to folks. Taxes. Doug, my partner in life and love and business, did our taxes every year. I wanted to balance that by doing something that I found unpleasant. He likes pansies. I really did not like pansies. Tax season was pansy season, and so I would plant pansies every year. Looking at pansies brought me back to childhood memories of being bullied for being effeminate and called a pansy. And I really didn't realize how much I had internalized that, and that was part of the reason that I really didn't like pansies. So in that moment, I was kind of like, all right, I want to understand pansies more, the genetics and the culture. And it turned out that pansies and my love of seeds actually started in the same way. The first seed I ever planted was in nursery school, and it was Johnny Jump Up. And Johnny Jump Ups, style with tricolor, represent the wild roots of pansies. And I remember planting them under the crabapple tree in our front yard, and they would come back every year unless my dad ran them over with the mower. So one common name for Johnny Jump Ups is heart ease, and they eased my heart before I even knew why my heart needed easing. As I grew, I started to understand why my heart hurt, because I lived in a world that really didn't want to see me fully bloom. There are pansies, berries, berry pansies all around us. I wanted to learn more about the flowers, their politics and genetics, and where their fortitude and diversity came from. I used to call everything a pansy, but actually there's differences between wild pansies. They all have 5 petals, but the V of 2 petals up and 3 down is a wild pansy, and for bred pansies it's 4 petals up and 1 down, which I think points at me a superb pansy. There's a complex social and political history embedded in pansies. The name comes from the French pensée, meaning thoughtful. And so how did that turn into an insult? It's because of sexism and misogyny. To call a man who's effeminate a pansy is an insult. In the 20s, my queer ancestors started to reclaim the word pansy as a symbol of joy. There was a movement called the pansy craze. But those in power pushed back, and being gay was criminalized, as it is again today. In the 60s, we started to see this come back, and in the 70s, let every pansy bloom was the banner at the Gay Pride Parade. Then we had the AIDS epidemic. This is a moment in 2020 when Larry Kramer, who's an important AIDS activist, died from that black pansy. I continued to integrate pansy symbiosis into my life as a queer person and seed lover, and I started playing with pansies in my garden and allowing them to cross freely and saving those seeds. And I need some water. It's okay, I'll make it. Delving into pansy genetics reveals a complexity that, to me, was much more complicated than the politics of it. I really have an embarrassingly rudimentary understanding of genetics, but there's genetics that control the color, but then there's this pattern gene that creates a genetic cascade that really determines where that color lines up, and that's how pansies get to paint their own portraits, their own faces. And I've been commissioning artwork to create these portraits of plants over the last 14 years, 250 works of art. And I wanted to celebrate pansies, and I found the right artist in Paul Harsley, who has a project where he goes to sites of violence against queer and trans people and plants a pansy to transform that moment and also bring attention to it. So we arrived back at that letter. She was really not happy with the artwork. And she's part of a pattern, a cascade of hate, of misunderstanding, of violence. And so the cascade affected me in that I wanted to be more visible, and I started collecting pansy brooches. And it turned out that my queer ancestors in the 20s also wore pansy brooches. So in this year of deadly and hateful atrocities, increased by our current people in power, I'm sharing Heartsease more fiercely than ever. And that statement from the parade comes to my mind often: let every pansy bloom. But how do we make this happen? We need to recognize the patterns that we're part of. We're seed keepers, breeders, researchers, and activists. I see a pansy in every face here. My hope is that in this moment, in this time of erosion, when we are being trampled in our own gardens, that you turn your faces to each other. You witness the creativity of the cascades you're creating, and you do what you need to do to make it possible for every pansy to bloom.
Okay, next up was to be Veronica Limeberry, who unfortunately got caught up in airplane hell and is still stuck in Virginia, so isn't going to be able to make it across. Fortunately, she did pre-record a video, so we're still going to get to see her presentation. We're just not going to have her in the space. And for folks that know Veronica, then that really is a great sadness. She brings a lot of just joyful energy to a room. So I kind of want to just invite us to imagine feeling that energy of somebody that we know and love and can really uplift us just by their presence, and feel a little bit lighter, a little bit more hopeful for the world, a little bit more passion for the things that we're into. So while I work out how to play this video, meditate on that, and then we'll move into it. everything apart from this. Look, Michael to the rescue, great. And I do realize I forgot Veronica's formal introduction. Veronica is an Appalachian seed and food sovereignty advocate and activist. She currently holds an NSF postdoctoral fellowship researching community seedways in the US, and we're excited to work with her. Okay.
Hello, everyone. So I want to begin this with a story of myself and how I came to seed work in my own life. So my grandfather grew up in Western North Carolina, the oldest of 9 children. His family survived through growing, foraging, and hunting their own foods, and definitely not in any romantic sense of the idea. It was hard and it was traumatizing. And yet, until the day he died, he kept a garden and he saved seeds. He foraged for poke salad and wild onions and forest medicines. He specifically told me not to be a farmer, to make sure I had my name on the door somewhere. And here I am, Dr. Limeberry, researcher on community seed and foodways, and farmers. The importance of seeds really hit home though when he passed away in 2014. See, he had grown these particular habaneros his whole life, handed down from his father, and so on. And I can't even tell you what type of variety they are, but they're really, really hot. And he, every summer he'd make hot sauce out of them, and no one could be in the house even a half a mile next to it except for him. And he always wore a black shirt with a front pocket, and he always had a habanero in this pocket to cut up with every single meal he ate. And when he died, next to his bowl of pinto beans that he had had for lunch that day was a half cut up habanero. So on his casket, instead of flowers, we had the florist make a spray out of the habanero plants he still had in his garden that July. And so he went back to the earth, taking his favorite seeds along with him. And in this experience, more than anything else, solidified for me that our seeds are us. They are our living ancestors, guides, mentors, friends we carry through life. And in this way, we not only protect and steward them, but they can protect us. And now I want to turn to the last decade of my own research, where we often rightly and importantly talk about policies to save our seeds. But what about the inverse? How do our seeds save us? And here I want to share the stories of peoples and communities who have used their seed agrobiodiversity to gain and implement legal rights to protect their own territorial sovereignty. First, I turn to my colleagues in Parque de la Papa in Peru, the place of origin of the potato, along with other culturally important foods such as quinoa and maca, to name a couple. Parque was established in 1997 by 6 Quechua communities of the area. Peru has a complex legal system relating to indigenous rights, and as such, these peoples did not intrinsically hold legal sovereignty over their own ancestral lands and foodways. According to Parque, of the 235 domesticated species and 4,000 varieties of papa in the world, the Parque contains respectively 8 and 2,300. Thus, different than many protected areas that conserve so-called wild spaces, Parque developed a community conserved area that protects domesticated biodiversity. That is, quote, product of hundreds of years of deliberate ecosystem management, genetic selection, and breeding by Andean farmers, end quote. In 2001, a U.S. company was granted a patent for producing maca extract. Co-founder of Andes, Alejandro Argumedo, points out that, quote, Andean indigenous communities have been using maca for food and medicinal purposes since before the conquest. Ironically, we are now in danger of losing maca not to extinction, but to predatory U.S. patents, end quote. Indigenous peoples of the Andes fought against this and other patents, and in 2004, after numerous protests, the National Anti-Biopiracy Commission was created along with law against biopiracy, emphasizing free and prior informed consent and benefit sharing led by indigenous peoples and communities. Parque created a biocultural heritage register as a tool for protection of indigenous seedways and knowledge. And this documents not only the seeds and these resources, but the community's cultures and practices that have protected and co-evolved along with them. In 2004, Parque also created an agreement with the International Potato Center for potato return to these communities. And through this agreement between Parque and CIP, territorial and seed sovereignty of these communities has become enshrined through contract law. Eventually, Parque would lead the world in recognizing indigenous biocultural heritage areas of territorial sovereignty with and through the cultural importance of agrobiodiversity protection. Thus, in many ways, Andean food and seedways has led to the protection and creation of Quechua territorial sovereignty in and of itself. Another case is in Oaxaca, Mexico, the home of corn and maize, the home of movements to protect indigenous sovereignty with and through Milpa ancestors. In 1998, numerous indigenous and Campesinos communities, along with researchers, founded the Community System for Biodiversity, SOCOBI in Spanish, to protect ancestral lands and milpa practices from the encroachment and displacement of an ecotourism park. By 2001, these peoples and communities have legally declared their remaining communal lands a communal system of protected areas, a CPAS. Secovi is the organizing entity of this CPAS, including the development of about 30 agrarian communities with a population that reaches over 78,000 people across the Sierra Sur of Oaxaca. Secovi emphasizes biocultural connection and integrating biological systems with social customs, territorial arrangements, regional arrangements, and policy, which are all key to creating the necessary protections for community biodiversity management. One co-founder, Marco Antonio Gonzalez, states that, quote, policies do not work as social instruments. Rather, customs and culture play a key role in fostering stable citizenship and healthy policies. The connection between ecology and community is central in creating demands for rights. And food is the connection across all of these systems, biological, cultural, territorial, and economic, end quote. Over the decades, Secovi has led movements to reestablish farmer-led community milpa systems and indigenous varieties of maize, frijoles, chile, squash, with and through agroecological cultivation of coffee. Their ongoing struggles to protect their seed systems has led to the recognition of their collaborative authority in REDD+ forest sustainability governance across the region, leadership in creating smallholder seed exchanges, and building local milpa systems that are resilient against numerous types of crisis. Through this work, they have not only become legally recognized as a community conserved area, but also as the primary decision makers and authorities over their own environment. Thus again, we see the fight to protect ancestral seed as a pathway to securing cultural, community, and territorial rights and sovereignties. These are the two cases that show how our work to protect our seeds also serves as work by our seeds to protect us through legally enshrined rights over community land, food, water, and territory. Indigenous sovereignty with and through seedways. There are numerous other cases across the world, including as recent as 2019, where the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians in Western North Carolina were one of the first tribes to regain wild foraging access to sacred plants on national park land. Independent environmental assessments found that Cherokee foraging actually improves wild seed availability of these plants, such as the Sotam plant pictured here. Here and then, I encourage us to think of ourselves in relationship with our seeds. We guide and protect them, and they simultaneously guide and protect us. Together, we co-evolve within crisis with the potential to emerge resilient and in resistance against these systems that seek to harm us. Thank you so much.
Okay, next up we have Sefra Alexander. Sefra is well known as the Seed Huntress and works with the Northeast Seed Network and the Freed Seed Federation. Of all the presenters, I know Sefra the least, but have long admired her work from afar. I've really appreciated the creativity and the energy that she's brought to this task. And one thing that kind of became really apparent from the beginning is that I don't think I've been in a space with her yet that she hasn't laughed about something or made a joke or just really been like a joy to be around, and that's been really fun to share. And I think in the bigger world, right, we deal with a lot of serious issues and there's a lot of challenges, especially in our current times. And if we can't bring some level of joy and celebration to our work despite all of those challenges, then we've really got to question what it is we're fighting for. So I appreciate that level of energy. So, Sefra, thank you.
Hello, everyone.
Yeah, whenever you're. Cool. Okay. On your mark, get set. Here we go. Welcome to the seashore as we travel to times of yore, these beautiful Matchemux lands stewarded for centuries by the Golden Hill tribe's hands, where mussels and clams decorate the sea and acorns and chestnuts massed on each and every tree. Connecticut, the place of the long tidal river, is where we are, and the 5 bankside farmers had come from afar.
1648 is when they made this place their home, delighted by the productivity of the well-caretaken loam. Seeds brought from England were sown there, germinating onions of such beauty it was almost hard to bear. The red, white, and yellow Southport Globe onion was here, with flavor and shape that inspires a tear. And onions make you cry too, right? The heirloom was cultivated by all who were around. The Jennings and Hulls and Meekers tilled the ground. The heirloom now in each field could be found, its perfect shape, the perfection of round. The seed became famous, the country wide over, touting its benefits on each seed catalog cover. Have you heard? We have the best onions that could be. Order our seeds, and you shall all surely see. But that's not all. If you want to increase your haul, we have innovated onion cultivation tools, it's true, making the harvest much easier for you. Seed drills and hoes and weeding carriages too. Pretty cool, right? The onion capital of the world we became, truckloads and truckloads, increasing our fame. The productivity, the taste, made all know its name. Along rutted roads into trucks and horse-drawn carriages, the harvest was gathered. For women, children, men, whole families, the abundant crop is what mattered. By the 1800s, there were 400,000 barrels each season, gave the sloop sailboat captains very good reason to venture to the New York City markets each week. The payment they received was certainly not meek, for the farmers this time was anything but bleak. Oh, great alliums, such nutrients you provide, the vitamin C helping stave scurvy aside, because we don't have citrus in the north. By your medicinal majesty we do abide, for knowing we are all healthier with you by our side. But alas, this great era met its end, when from the soils cutworm and smut did send, a rotting situation that these onionites simply could not mend. The demise meant no more fields to tend. Sad. Soon the onion warehouses fell into prohibition delight, where Fitzgerald and Zelda fit in, well, quite right. Those boozy nights by the seashore were quite a sight, a debauchery sunken into without much of a fight. Well, a century and a half later, the seed huntress began a quest, putting our local soils back to the test. Could this magnanimous heirloom be revived? Can we remember the agrarian history that has barely survived? What do you think? Well, with dear friends, we tilled the historic ground, harvested salt hay and seaweed from the Sound, the Long Island Sound. Lo and behold, the great globes rised up, guarded over by this most faithful pup. 2 years, we all know that, and the seeds were back, those pom-poms cheering. They had overcome the attack. Oh, good people, we no longer lack. The farming of these beauties is back on track. So let us all once again fill our seed sack. Uh-oh, did I change the sack? Oh. And with seed we must share, with each and every one that may dare. A seed library we did build, Rebecca, so that again the local lands they may be tilled to plant this yummy, nutritious friend. Became again a local trend. Yeah. Long 20 seconds on this one. Did I break it? Did I do something wrong? Oh, I always break something. Okay.
I did it. I think you read something.
Okay, so now.
You just let out my go.
Sure. How will I know when? Okay. All right. Well, that's fine. But that's not all. The youth, they must know the joys of what it is to grow. To the garden and classroom we did go to teach the joys of what it is to sow. But we are in Connecticut after all, and perhaps some of you may have heard, but they sure like to have a ball. The Southport Globe Onion Festival was born. Tell everyone, you and you and you, here's a horn. Well, the townspeople, they did come. Even a Greene came and taught some Heron. Onion t-shirts and food and games, oh my. It would be impossible not to have fun. Just try. I think they were advancing. Hear ye, we now proclaim this Southport Globe Onion Day. Shouts and cheers. Oh, hooray! Maybe from this audience. The onion ball drops as on New Year's Day, and the Talking Heads drummer, well, he did play. Wait, what? What's this? The Golden Globe Onion Awards are today. Get it? Golden Globe? So here I share with you a little tale of a mighty onion that did prevail. What heirloom will you meet on your seed trail? And I do so hope all your dreams set sail. For we, the people of the pinch, shall never fail. Yay! Onion! Thank you!
Okay, Hassan, Adeeb, very excited to introduce our final speaker. Hassan works with Ujamaa Cooperative Farming Alliance and lives in Accokeek, Maryland. I kind of want to share that I think Hassan is like Ujamaa's best kept secret. He's never, to my knowledge, presented on seeds, and yet he's an integral part of the Ujamaa community. I've been extremely fortunate to travel with Ujamaa crew on like various road trips across Alabama and Georgia and North Carolina. You know, we visit farms and we all pile into an Airbnb and share food and have a good time. And Hassan is always the caretaker. He's the person that's holding us together on those trips. And over, I've seen him tend to people like their garden with dedication or attention to just really look after us in a real deep and caring way. And I wanted to share that because I felt the warmth of that attention myself, and I know there's people in the room that have felt it too. So I'm very happy to bring Hassan to the stage. If you want.
Hello. Thank you.
You ready?
I don't know. Okay, where's my, what's his name?
As soon as I press it, it'll come up.
Okay, good. All right.
You ready?
Yes. All right, 2019, after 30 years of teaching high school social studies history, right, I'm finally retired, okay? Our 3 daughters are all adults, and they are gone to other states. And now I'm going to do what every red-blooded American male wants to do. I'm going to turn their area of play into my man cave, okay? All right, I have a new man cave. It's a quiet area where I can read, you know. I'm reading fiction now, not nonfiction, which I love. I admit that fiction is nice, but nonfiction is really my love. Across from the nook, my reading nook, is also a widescreen TV that my daughter gifted to me. All right, and so in addition to occasional exercise, I binge on foreign language and independent cinema. Occasionally, I watch some bloody dramas too. But you know, the point is, I have an opportunity to escape. Right on that wall are bookcases in my man cave that hold artifacts from my wife and I's travel, mostly to Africa, African masks, African sculptures, African cloth, all purposefully placed. The bookshelf below is African American and African history and culture. I even had time to arrange them chronologically. But 2020 and 2021 came as something unexpected happened. okay? The pandemic, okay? And my wife came up with the great idea of, there's people that want to garden now, so we should begin to distribute heirloom seeds. And pretty soon, my man cave was invaded by family, friends, volunteers, but sometimes there were like 10, 15 people in this area that I had thought was my solitude place, and my man cave was under siege, okay? Right, now, first it was the seed parties. Next thing you know, the furniture began to move, okay? Right. They moved out the futon. They moved out, they put plastic bins next to my bookshelves, okay? And plastic. It's like in the 80s, I didn't even wear polyester. The whole idea of plastic in my area that I created with wood was unfathomable. Even the bathroom that I had thought I was going to change into, this ultra-modern tub and shower thing, became an area for seeds. And it was like, oh, no moisture near the seeds. We can't do that. Right. So that didn't happen. Even the utility room and the laundry room became repurposed, okay? There's like things coming from the ceiling that are, drying seeds, and then all of a sudden another freezer, another refrigerator. I am an empty nester. What do I need with 4 things for storing cold? The garage was even, hey, now, I admit that my garage for decades has not had a car inside of it. But at least I could walk into it, okay? Right. There's like a hoop house over there on the right. There's screens on the left. I don't even know what that thing is in the middle. Right. It just showed up one day, okay? And then back in the man cave, my bookshelves and the African mass, they share space with seeds that are going to be packed again, in little packets. And I'm excited about being engaged in new, learning, but winnow wizards, what is that, okay? Right? But, as time moved on, even my reading began to change. Now I'm reading books about, regenerative agriculture, the history of seeds, the history of seed saving, but it's nonfiction, and that is my love, okay? So, soon I began to settle into my new life as manager of the seed shop. I realized that order could come, right? Volunteers only two times a week. And I was no longer alone in my, it's not the man cave, it's the seed shop now, all right? And there's noise in there, there's people in there, but, my quiet refuge has become maybe a place for friends and family working, and I began to welcome them, working, basically trying to serve a greater purpose, okay? Now, one night after everybody had left, okay, right, I'm looking at what used to be my man cave, and on the walls, I realized that there are the artifacts that I've been collecting for decades really do represent seed saving, soil, the earth. Those Dogon doors are for storing grain. They're the doors that the Dogon people in Mali use. The Chihuahua mass right there. They represent honoring seed, honoring soil fertility, honoring harvest. And I realized I knew this because I had even taught it, okay? All right. So I want to say that I had thought that my man cave was disappearing. But in truth, I realized that my man cave was really evolving. I realized that the seed shop isn't an invasion. It actually is a connection to something traditional. Seed keeping connects us with our roots and for future generations. And I realized that helping my wife build this heirloom seed enterprise is a continuation of something greater. An unbroken thread linking past and present. And as Owen Taylor of True Love Seeds has said, that keeping seeds is also keeping seed stories, cultural information, and traditions. Now, I have a new routine. My wife and I are constantly on the road, like now, all right? And my retirement routine has changed, but I'm not going to say that it's not relaxing, but it is a lot of fun. She presents, I do the exhibitions, and my man cave is, okay, it's showing, okay? My man cave has been transformed, but I admit, so have I. Okay? I'm not just packing seeds or fulfilling online seed orders. I am now preserving history, participating in agricultural traditions, increasing food crop biodiversity, and a more resilient and sustainable food system. And that is more meaningful than my solitude could ever be.
Wow. Okay, that was the inaugural Seedy PechaKucha. One more round of applause for everyone. I think there's probably feedback somewhere. I'm already calling it the inaugural one, which suggests there's going to be another one, but I don't have any position or right to say that. But if you fill in the feedback and it's really awesome, then maybe we'll do another one in 2 years. So please take that opportunity to express whether you enjoyed it or not. And then I'm going to invite OSA folks to come up with just a couple of announcements for the rest of the conference. So thank you so much.